Every damn day. Hello, everyone. It's Jerry at the Fledge. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 9 of Every Damn Day. I'm sitting down in the engineering room at the Fledge today because you're probably going to hear some music bleed through. We have our ecstatic dance going on, but put together by the Lansing Ecstatic Dance Group. And come on down if you want to dance and do whatever you want to do and get into a trance, I think. And then immediately following that is the drum circle, which is another good meditative thing to do. So come on down to the drum circle if you'd like. And we will have masks and social distancing at both of the events. It's up in the sanctuary and all that. Also, we have a big week coming up. So check out the Facebook page and thefledge.com/events if you would like to know what's going on. Especially check it if you plan on coming to an event, because we're currently going online or canceling about 2/3 of our events right now because of COVID. So enough on that. Oh, one more thing. Spotify, Amazon, Apple Music, Facebook podcasts, we're on them all now. So go out and find us, download us. The audio version is going to be getting better as we figure out some engineering. But please give us a subscription or a follow when you get a chance. So let me get the camera right. So my guest is in the studio with me here today. And I am excited to bring on our good friend Jaxon. How you doing?
Hey, how's it going? It's good to be here today. Happy season 2.
Yeah, thank you. So you were on last year by yourself?
Yeah, I was on last year, like right around when the pandemic started, like around like March, I believe. Yeah, because we were still doing it. Like I was in that living room, I remember.
So we're still doing them remote. And anybody that wants to sign up for Every Damn Day, there's a sign up on thefledge.com, or just message me, Jerry at thefledge.com. We're still doing them remote because COVID is still a thing.
Exactly. It's still really heavy right now.
You've had a bit of I don't know if it's a scare or not, but
I work at a school. I work at a preschool, and there was a exposure recently, so my classroom had to get closed down, and I had to kind of go through the whole ordeal of like getting my test and making sure that I wasn't going to be, exposing anybody else before I came back to work. And I'm like boosted and like fully vaccinated, but it's still something where it's just like I don't want to think about like giving something to a kid or getting some kid sick or another like family or friend.
That sounds. I mean, it would be such a nightmare burden to have to carry.
Just waking up like anxious about it, because my kids, every day I'm just like, I'm coming home and I'm talking to like my partner or like my friends. I'm like, oh yeah, James did this, or they're playing with this toy, or blah blah blah, and then thinking about that instead of like, oh my gosh, like what if they have to go like to the hospital or yada yada yada. So that's just like, that's stressful, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And you deal with pretty young kids, right?
Yeah, I deal with like 4-year-olds, so they're still under the age where like you can actually get fully vaccinated, but they're starting at the age where they can wear masks. So it's like really heavy every day of like trying to like, I don't want to say instill, but kind of like show them ways of like being comfortable with wearing masks and thinking about like, like germs and sanitation in a new way, more than just like do your ABCs when you wash your hands and don't like wipe a booger on your friend, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's sensory. The 4-year-olds are just all those nerve endings and all those new feelings are like the first time in like being a human you feel those things. So having like a mask on your face all day is like a very like sensory overload for a lot of them. So it's a lot of like soothing most of the day.
Do you find that they try to be compliant, or is it just random? And
it really depends. Like I said, with the sensory overload thing, sometimes they'll just like rip it off and run away. That's like if you're just upset and you're like throwing a toy or like trying to hit and kick. But a lot of the time it's one of those things where like you start throwing on like an Ants Go Marching song and they just all want to march with you. If you kind of like, well, I got my mask on, doesn't it look super cool? They're like, yeah, like let me get one of those, I want my own, you know what I mean? So it's really like it's just like working with them and working in communication is the big thing, like learning how they communicate.
If we're not careful, I'll talk to you about education and early childhood development the whole show.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So I think we can leave some space later on.
Yeah, perfect.
Let's get into you a little bit more. What's your story?
So basically, like I'm local, like I'm from mid-Michigan. I kind of grew up in a rural town, but a lot of my ties are kind of like Lansing and just kind of like the car generation here. Like I had a lot of family that like worked in the factories. So like I'm also an artist, and a lot of my art is tied into kind of like the old like car generation here, and kind of like how, I don't know, like the Midwestern Mecca that this area used to be. So that I'm very like tied into that, and I have a very like, I don't know, a part of me that feels very akin to that. So that's why I really like being based here. You know what I mean? That's a big part of my like artistic journey too, is kind of like, trying to represent like where I'm from and like the story of where like that place is and like where it came from. But I'm also a teacher. Like I've started teaching about 2 or 3 years ago. I've always worked really well with children. I think that's part of like the music thing, is just kind of like being able to like get a crowd on your side. Like a classroom's kind of like a crowd. So
Yeah.
I teach too. And in between doing music, I kind of like got into modeling more, and I like moved to New York and I tried that. And I also like was in Milan right before all of COVID started. That was like a whole other like thing that happened, an adventure. So I'm just kind of like, there's a lot of different things I do, kind of jack of all trades, but it's definitely like led me here. I'm a fledgling as well. I really like the community here and the people, and like getting to work with that, and like continuing our relationship here and with you and like Shannon and like obviously all the other artists and fledglings. So yeah, that's kind of who I am, like what I'm about.
Well, we love having you around. Let's stick with the modeling for a little bit. You had a pretty big thing happen
Yes.
recently, right?
Yeah, 2021 in the summer, I was like kind of working like a dead end job, just trying to stay safe during COVID, and I got an opportunity to go and do a photo shoot. It was actually 5 editorials I shot in June, and I ended up being on the cover of Vogue Italia and doing like a full spread in Vogue Italia, which was just like kind of out of nowhere. Like, oh my gosh, this is awesome, because things were so wild with COVID, and around the summer it kind of calmed down. Everybody's like, oh, the vaccinations are like fully out, like people are going to be able to do stuff. So I was like, I really want to like jump on this opportunity, because I know like by this time it's going to be where it is currently, where like everything's getting canceled and you kind of have to stay home again. So that was an amazing opportunity.
So being on the cover, even, I mean, I guess it's country or national or regional,
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
That's still a pretty big accomplishment, right?
Yeah, it was definitely like, because it was one of those things where they got out there and like, we're going to shoot 5 shoots. I don't know what's going to happen. And I was like, oh, okay. So you kind of do all this stuff, and then you come home, you start working like you're dead. And I was a janitor at the time, I was like cleaning a building, and then you're mopping a floor, and all of a sudden you get a text. It's like, you're on the cover, and you're just like, oh my gosh, you know what I mean? This is something I'm going to mention every single thing I do from now, like forever.
So you're like the Goodwill Hunting of
Yeah,
modeling?
yeah, literally. But especially with the mask on, like I'll tell people at work, they're like, I would have never known, but I mean, you always wear the mask. And I'm just like, yeah, it's kind of hard to tell if somebody's like what they fully look like when you're like covered up.
So is that going to open up? I mean, obviously it's in your portfolio now.
Yeah.
What kind of opportunities are you seeing?
A lot more opportunity, because it's Italian. There's a lot more opportunities in Italy. Like I was supposed to, well, I don't want to say supposed to, but I was given an opportunity to go to Milan like this season, but it was just like very, I don't know, it's complex right now, just with like COVID and like the dice you're rolling, like the odds are much higher and the risks are much higher, which they wanted me to stay there for 53 days, which they offered to pay for like the ticket and room and board, but that's like 53 days of like I kind of describe it of like the American Idol castings, or like, because when you're watching American Idol, like the people you're seeing do the casting, they're in the line when in between the shots, when you're seeing the line of 500 people.
Yeah.
Like they want to pay you essentially to go to Italy for 53 days to be one of the people who stands in line, who may not even get like the 5 minutes of like Simon Cowell making fun of you or whatever, you know what I mean? So it's just like, yeah, that's a lot of money you're losing. So like it got me opportunities like that, but that's the thing, is it's like, it opens a lot of doors, but just because that door opened doesn't mean you want to get the first thing you see when you walk in, you know what I mean? So like, so that's really cool and exciting, because even getting something like that, I'm like, oh my God, like I'm just from like, Midwestern town. I never thought I'd even get to say no or try something like that. It's just like,
we all have that attitude, right?
Yeah.
We're just from little old Lansing.
Yeah, literally.
But, there's global software companies that come out of here.
Yeah.
There's international artists that
Magic
come out of
Johnson,
here.
Stevie Wonder, like, you know what I mean?
Well, those guys were a long time ago. We got some good
Hey,
stuff
right now,
happening
exactly.
right
Yeah,
now,
that is true. Yeah.
But something in our culture, I think, is, well, we're just this hick town, and we're not proud enough of Lansing. And
Yeah.
then we beat each other up for being proud of Lansing.
Exactly.
What are you talking about?
And I think it's like that humbling part that like it needs to be kept as like pushing forward, because I think it is really like, I think we do like really like build each other up, because like whenever you do see somebody doing something at Lansing, like everybody talks about it for so long. They're like, oh my god, you remember when this person did that? You remember how this person's doing that? And that's the part that I really like am akin to here, is like, because it's a city, but it's so small that like when you know everybody, you're so happy to see somebody like do something different or change their situation or have that thing they always talked about being a side gig be like their thing, like I love that.
Tell us about music and what, if you don't mind me, I'll bring Bilal into it a little bit. Bilal was on the show earlier last week, and he's one of your, what are you independent and with Bilal? And
yeah, so it's kind of like we were me and Bilal, like we're good friends. We met like about like 3 or 4 years ago now, like when we were both getting out of high school, and we were both kind of doing our own independent art, and we just kind of like really liked each other's sounds, and kind of like been hopping it out of bands and wanted to like have a project, and so we formed this band that was kind of just really like heavy electronic, like horror, like movie inspired music and like cartoon inspired music, and we eventually named it Crawl Spaces. And that's kind of our main thing right now. It started as just like every once in a while we play a show and they need like a third act, but we're both playing like our single set, and we're like, oh, okay, we'll play together. We got some songs. Then it kind of turned into like, with working full time and moving out and having jobs and stuff, like our music projects just became one whole project called Crawl Spaces. And that's kind of been like the main thing that we've been working on music wise together. We make like a lot of different music videos. Over the summer, I made a music video called Ghost in the TV, which we shot in the summer right before I went to do the Vogue Italy shoot in New Jersey, actually. And it was really exciting. And we shot with one of my friends from Detroit I met via like another show. And the cool thing about Crawl Space is it's really like, it is me and Bilal oriented, but like anyone who's involved is kind of like part of Crawl Spaces. We try and give like full credit and like full sharing, which is kind of like something we learned from the Fledge, where like every offshoot is something that happens here. It's like a long tree of connection, you know what I mean? Like that inspiration, where we don't want it to just be like, oh yeah, you came and helped like the band, you know what I mean? It's like, no, like you're a part of this. Like this is like you have a share, like you took the time. So that's like another thing we'd really try and inspire, just so that like, and it kind of gives like room for growth, so it's not just like stagnant, because then somebody can jump in and they are immediately part of like something new that's happening. Just like, which is why we moved into more things. Like we're like making a game. Like we did an album release for our new album called Bored of Being Kind, which is about it's on all streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, and we did that show in Rio Town, because that's when I first moved back to Lansing from like my parents' house. We love the Robin Theater, and we want to do our album release there. And like we kind of realized in October that it's going to lead towards the COVID cases being where they're at now, where it's just like skyrocketing. So we're like, we want this to be a full experience where like you can take something away and think about it later on and get something that's like going to come to you like within time. So we're doing like a game release, which did like a little coupon code that came with the gift bags we gave out. And we're going to kind of like slowly release beta versions of this game we had called like Debt Dasher, which is basically like a post-apocalyptic like debt collection game. So you're doing like a mock like door dashing like Instacart thing, where you're like, you have like a software engineering degree, but like you can't really like afford to like move to the place to like get the starter job, so you got to pay off some debt like door dashing, but the apocalypse is happening. So it's like this whole like, why am I paying off this college debt when I have this software engineering degree? So it's like, and that keeps it fun for us, because when you're just like writing the same songs over again and like tapping on the computer, you're just like, I just feel like I need something new,
I think you guys are really primed for what NFTs could be.
Oh, okay,
right,
like
putting your art as an NFT, but then unlocking levels of the game because you own the NFT.
Oh, that's awesome! Like that.
Yeah. Bilal and I have been talking about it a little bit on the side, and I think
that would be so cool.
It's probably time for us to all sit down and see how that would really
and just
really
like
work.
The symbols.
I'd love to help you guys with that.
That would be so fun, Jerry. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Yeah,
I want to be part of the Crawl Space community.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Already, I mean, as much as we let us practice here all the time.
And you use my art installation.
The bulges. Yeah, that was awesome. That was beautiful. Yeah, that was another thing. Is like you let us just literally take parts of pieces here so we could do something somewhere else. Like it's just
It's
so,
all of
like,
ours. It's all of ours.
yeah, like that's so beautiful. It's just so like visceral. Like I love that.
Can we? Well, did you say enough about where people can download your music, how they can support you? Let's talk a little bit more about that. But I do want to go back to the early childhood education.
Right,
and
no,
stuff.
I hear that. Yeah, Crawl Spaces, we're on YouTube. We're currently still working on the video game. We kind of have some like other like smaller pieces like comic books in the works. We kind of want to work with some local illustrators and like kind of release some like simple comics to come out with like, you know, like just like single releases for like our music, because we're not really working on like any full albums right now. And like we're I don't know, we're really like, we wanted to perform a lot, and now it's kind of harder to plan that. So we're kind of just taking a little break on releasing anything like big until like we can perform again. So just look out for like video game updates, and look out for any more like future music video updates, because now that things are more like virtual again, we're just going to be releasing that kind of content. TikToks too. We're trying to get a little more big on TikTok, but it's just like painstaking doing all the editing for it.
I give up on trying to. Every video I've ever edited for TikTok has gotten the least amount of views.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
I just shoot it and go with it.
The chicken, your chicken TikToks are always like so.
Everyone loves the chickens more than me. It hurts my feelings. Yeah, the chicken. I should make a new chicken TikTok so you guys know that they're not out there dying in this cold. They're really happy and comfortable and fed well and warm.
Plump.
Yeah. Let's go a little bit, and we're probably going to start hearing music in the background. The ecstatic dance is probably coming out of their warm-up meditation. So sorry about that if it bleeds through too much, but I don't think it will. Early childhood education. You said in the 4-year-old range. These are such critical times, right? Why are you focused on that and not high schoolers? Why are you focused on the early childhood?
I guess it was always like at first it was like just the proclivity, like kids around that age always wanted to interact with me. I feel like maybe it was just because like I'm kind of tall, like I'm like 6'4" or something, or maybe just because like I almost feel like maybe because I'm kind of androgynous too, and there's kind of like that mix of them like kind of being like, I don't know if you're a boy or a girl. It's like mystery, you know, because they kind of just flock towards me. They're like, what's going on? They're like trying to climb up me. They're asking me a bunch of questions. And then also like when I started like getting reflections from people about that, and part of the reflections being like, oh, I hate working with kids. That's crazy. How do you like that? And I'm just like, I don't know. It's just like I'm good at talking with people. I'm a people person, and they're kind of just like little people. I don't know why they're like so shunned away. And I feel like that's the same thing. There's a lot of people who do that with the high school students and the middle school students too. And I feel like at that age is a really good time to like establish like the emotional sensitivities and emotional boundaries that I feel like were not maybe like available for like a lot of people, and like are really like big enforcements in how like you relate to people in the future.
One of my guests the other day, Kimberly Levon, shared an research paper with me about the trauma that happens before you're able to articulate or express or maybe even feel it, the way you were talking about the sensory. And when that trauma happens before you've got the other tools to deal with it, it expands your creativity.
Oh, okay, yeah, because you're trying to build context for what happened.
So you're trying to explain it, but you don't have words, or you don't have whatever. So you might have to draw. You might have to. You're really trying to figure out your brain.
That's amazing.
And I want to read it a little bit more, but what do you see? Well, first of all, I want to go back to something you said, that the kids jump up on you and all that. I have literally witnessed that driving by your school while you were out.
Oh my God! Yeah.
And I just want to add that I've seen you. You meet those kids where they're at. You meet them in that 4-year-old space. Whether it's crouching down to talk with them on kind of their level, or whether it's just having that understanding that, I'm not going to yell at you to put your mask on.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to help you get there.
Exactly. No, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I feel like it's the biggest thing is like everybody wants to be talked to like they're talking to like someone who understands them or is an equal, not like somebody who's yelling at them. And especially when you're like as big as you are compared to a kid, that's like a big connection. That's very special to them.
That's you got to be careful with that, because that, I've got a memory of it some teacher, I can't even remember their
Yeah.
name, yelling at me over
Exactly.
something.
You don't want to be
and
the
just-
like, oh, I remember Mr. Ronald, man.
Yeah.
Like,
That's it, and it's 50 years later. And that's one
Yeah.
of the memories you still
and you're constantly
have.
relating like assholes you need to be in this guy or that guy. Yeah, no, yeah, I think about that a lot. I'm just like, no, I don't want to be Mr. Smith. I'm not going to be Mr. Smith.
So how with the modeling, with the music, I see how you could integrate that in with the work that you're doing.
Yeah, no, it's a big key part.
How does modeling fit in to all of this? Does it have a role in the early childhood education, or does the early childhood education give you something that you take to the modeling?
It's both, really. Yeah, it's for sure. It's like they both tie into each other. I feel like when the teaching the kids kind of give me this certain energy and different like kind of perspective that when going into the modeling world, which is like a very like selfish, cutthroat, like you don't know why money is going to certain places for what reason, that like it kind of like is a relatability that it isn't often there. And I think also with like going through that cutthroatness and that just off the chopping block of just being like, oh, okay, this is how like the most judgmental place you can possibly be. I'm going to then go into a preschool and try and be as open and understanding and kind of just like do the polar opposite, because that is not like a mind frame I relate to, you know.
Raven was into modeling when she was young, and she's still doing it.
Oh, it's hard for sure.
It's nasty.
Yeah, they just like it's a manipulation game. It's like they want to control your mind and your body, and you just got to have so much like, you have to be so willful and just have like a very like understanding of yourself and what you want to do, just so it doesn't, your dreams or whatever you want to do isn't like someone else's, you know. Like,
what motivates you to do that?
Do the modeling or the teaching?
The modeling.
I guess it's like I really like art is the big thing. Like I really like, I think that's the thing, is like the big thing that inspires me is like, okay, what can I do that is like art? How can I make money? How can I like make my living around art? And that has changed in multiple forms. Like I feel like teaching is an art in and of its form, you know what I mean? And with the modeling is like, I love the photos, and I also really love acting, and I really think it's kind of like, I like putting on a show. And the thing I like about modeling is it's kind of like you're putting on a show. The smoke and mirrors of like, I'm going to like stand here with this like one little flower in this like corner, and like you can imagine it's a castle, but it's like a subway in some like greasy part of like Brooklyn or yada yada yada. Like I really like that like illusion part of it, and I think that's the reason that I keep doing it, because you kind of get like fixated on that if you love those things, and like those things are very like long yield returns. It's not like immediate. Like the immediate things you have to deal with is like the bullshit of like bookers and like the companies and them being like, okay, well, we're going to charge you 13% on every minute you sleep in this bed that we told you we pay this room for. And it's just like crazy, all the paperwork. And then when you're finally just there in the moment, like putting on that like play of sorts, it's just like, I don't know, you just like hear the music and you're just like in it and you're like on fire, you know, and then it closes up shop and you're just like right back to like the build up of that next moment. It's those moments that I really like ride for, you know, and you take the risk for, but you got to weigh how much you need that versus what else is going on in your life, because it takes so long to build up to that.
There's some evaluation points at 4 or 5 years old, and then 3rd grade, then 8th grade, and then all of that. What do you think what are you worried most about with the shutdowns, the masks, the back and forth? We're at school one day, we're not at school this other day. We're missing this lesson or playtime even. It's really about playing it.
Exactly.
What you're doing, right?
For sure. It's really about like well, the thing that like the way I've tried to explain it to people is I think like a big part of childhood, and like especially like when I like explained it to like people like my parents' age in this way of like when you talk to a kid, they're telling you stories, and all their stories are like, oh well, I was at church, I was at the playground, I was at blah blah blah's house, I was at yada yada yada's house. And this is like context. This is like how you build up the tools to relate to the new world you're going to. So you're like, oh, well, this person's kind of offbeat and they kind of smell like patchouli and weed. They're like Aunt Linda. They go into this category. That's how a kid's brains work. You have all this context that branches into new context so you can keep moving. And like those tools of context that you build up at 4 and 5 going into school, when like you hop into school and there's so much like new interaction and like new context that needs to be formed. Those kids don't have that because like they aren't going to the playground, they aren't going to Aunt blah blah blah's house, they aren't going to yada yada yada. Like you talk to the kids and like they tell these stories and they're at home, and they're like at home in a different room. That's the biggest thing I notice, and that's the thing that scares me, is because like you can tell a kid all you want, all their ABCs, and show them like an elephant and like on a picture, and like show them an apple on a picture, but like going and like experiencing that and seeing an elephant and picking up the apple, that forms a whole new layer of synapses. So like you really like have an understanding versus like you've learned something. And that's the thing that like I'm worried about, because like they are not going to be able to just like dive in and like get dirty, you know what I mean? I don't even know how to explain it, but just like get your hands up in it. And that's like,
I think that at somewhere in our educational system, and it seems to get earlier and earlier,
yeah,
we're taking the play away, the playing in the mud,
exactly,
and trying to overprotect and do all of these different things, and we're going to lose that, and we've been losing that for whether it's COVID or a bunch of different reasons,
or just like the programming,
and I don't know, I'm just worried about that. But I also think about that study that I referenced. Are these kids when they're 20, are they going to be more creative? Are they going to be more rebellious? Are they going to be more in tune with their own emotions and feelings because they had to deal with them themselves?
And they're more inward.
Or is it going to be more traumatic and detrimental to them?
Yeah, are they going to take it more heavily? Yeah, no, it's really like, it's interesting. It's really interesting too, because of like how the children like interact with other kids, because there's so many kids who like you can tell that like at 4 or 5, when they would have like interacted with so many other kids by this age, that like they're doing it for the first time, and like they're talking to like the children like they would like their unanimous like parent that's there, and they're not really like having that context of relation either. But that's the other thing, is like these children also, like, because we have like tech time and stuff, I know this is a little bit of a tangent, they're very adept with like the iPad. Like they can like go to the settings and like they have to be like, please don't do that, stop changing the setting to Chinese, like we don't need to do that. And but I feel like that's the other thing, is like you said, with that searching out and that imagination and that creativity, like if things are going to remain inside, they're going to find new ways to like enter, like, I don't know, like the internet and like the metaverse, and like use that layer of like, because that's what they're going to have access to, you know what I mean? Maybe they're not going to be able to like go out and like be on the playground and like deal with like spit or somebody saying something, and then them having to go home and have a context for a new word and have their mom or dad be like, oh, don't say that, you know what I mean? It's like they're going to have that on the internet, you know? And yeah, that's kind of the way I see everything going, because like and my kids have phones and stuff too. You know what I mean? So it's like this.
Yeah, parents.
Yeah.
Parents. As you look at what's happening in our community, obviously we know about poverty because Lansing's been in poverty for 40 years, a high percentage of poverty. We see gun violence a lot, coming out of 2021's record year. A guy got arrested yesterday, a 9-hour standoff on the south side of Pleasant Grove and Holmes, for shooting a gun off in the air. Well, so we've got the violence, we've got the poverty. We also have this confidence in the city, the pride in the city, the culture of the city, that I think contributes to a lot of our problems. What could you recommend to somebody, or what's something you do that maybe we could mimic that helps with one of these weaknesses in the community, if you will? Because we do have a strong community.
Yeah.
How do you point that strength in the right direction, and what is the right direction from your perspective?
I mean, obviously, like most of what I do is obviously small scale. I think like the big thing, like you said, is perspective. I think it's a lot of like instead of like driving by like the same like unhoused person every day and being like, oh my gosh, how long is he going to be out here, is like interacting with them in whatever way you can, you know what I mean? Or like you know, there's been plenty of people who are like, hey dude, like, can you just like give me like a Coke or blah 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 blah, and then it's like, and then after like I got that dude that Coke, I see him every day and I'm like, hey, like, how's it going, how have you been, you know what I mean? And just like, and that's something like I learned from you also, is just like befriending those parts of the community, and like that TikTok you made of like if it's terribly cold outside, like imagine if you were a house person, and it's just like trying to think of where other people are at, like as for like large scale gun violence and things, I'm not too sure what to do about that, but I think
But
it is
at the same level, it's the 4-year-olds being raised to the third.
the
and all of
emotional
that.
sensitivity.
There's a preventative measure that I think that you contribute to that you'll never get credit for, or you'll never be able to trace to Mr. Jackson.
Those early stepping stones.
So we all can't go intervene like the village does. We got to do other work. We've got to take care of basic needs. We have to take care of other parts
of the system that lead to.
I think what you're doing with the early childhood development, and then really stretching the culture and putting new things out there. I mean, you guys have almost created your own genre of music.
Thank you. I appreciate all this.
What did we forget to talk about?
I think that's really like covered almost everything that's been going on, like especially with like the Milan trip and like music coming out and just like early childhood education and like modeling and the community and everything like that. I think that's everything.
Did you put any links in your bio? I couldn't remember.
Oh yeah, we have a link tree in the bio for like Crawl Space's band page also. Yep, and I did not send a link for the bio that I sent you though.
Okay, if you don't mind going back to the show later. And
I'll put a link in the bio for the show. Yeah, for all of our music and everything and where to find our videos and stuff.
All right. Well,
thank you so much for having us, Jerry. Happy season 2.
Thank you. I appreciate you having you on and taking your time.
And thank you for having me as always.
All right, everyone. That's a wrap. We'll see you tomorrow. I've got a really another interesting guest making the community stronger, Miss Shara Treeweiler, who is one of 2 Black registered farmers in the state of Michigan, and the only female Black livestock farmer in the state of Michigan. So let's talk to her tomorrow about her journey through all of that. So love y'all. See you tomorrow. Have a great Sunday.